All right, and continuing with our Freedom PS21 service series right here, we are going to now focus on the igniter removal and replacement. So our igniter is mounted while you're facing the stove on the right-hand side. The igniter is actually right in here. So we're just gonna go through the steps one by one. Again, first off, make sure your stove is completely unplugged from the wall while you're working with any of the electrical back here. So the igniter wires, as you can see, they come right over here to 2 spades. So Nate just has 2 sets of pliers. Sometimes these can be really tight, and rather than ruining those spades, grab a couple pairs of pliers and they'll pull right apart. Just like that. So, and if the heat shrinking around there kind of comes up, just do your best to kind of slide that back over that metal there like that. Just like that. So now that we have the wires disconnected, the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to remove this blue hose. So from our air intake, this blue hose comes out, and this actually helps to rush some air past the igniter so we have a faster ignition cycle. You'll also see that blue hose coming over on the other side right here. We had that off when we were doing the combustion blower, but that is splitting that air that's coming into the unit and helping with air wash to keep the glass clean. So back over here to our igniter. Now that we have the electrical disconnected and the hose off, we are going to remove 3 bolts, one right there, and one right there as we take off that cover plate. So again, have your set of metric Allen wrenches handy. And again, if these bolts happen to be tight, go ahead and soak them down a little bit, a little WD-40. But for the most part, they should be pretty easy to snap loose. And we want to be just pulling all 3 of those out. You'll notice that there is a hole right up top, right over here, but there is not a bolt that goes over there. So it's just those initial 3 that have to come out to release what I call like this igniter cover plate. So now that we have this plate loose, go ahead and start to pull that off, Nate. And we're gonna try to feed this grouping of wires through there because we're gonna have to unthread the igniter and we don't want those wires twisting up in there. So our igniter is now exposed. As you can see, it sits inside of a housing right here, and we have a brass bolt right there that is threading it in. So what we're going to do is we're either going to grab a wrench, a crescent wrench, or a good pair of pliers, and we're going to start to loosen that and completely unthread it from the housing. So once you bust it loose, and that crescent wrench works pretty well to do that, then we can pretty much grab it with the pliers. Again, the whole thing is going to want to turn with us. The wires and everything. So the more that we can release those wires from that housing, the easier that this process is going to be. In fact, Nate, why don't you just pull those wires all the way through that housing? Because even as you see right here how it's twisting, and we want to avoid that just for ease of pulling that out. So with the housing completely removed, it's going to be a little bit easier here as we completely unthread that igniter. You will find that you have to keep cranking it until all the threads are all the way out. It's a very snug fit, we'll say, inside of there. And he's able to leave the last few threads by hand. Sometimes he's got strong fingers. But that's it. So the igniter is out. Let's take a close-up look at the igniter. So hot rod element right here. Again, the hot air rushing past that igniter is actually what is lighting our fire. So again, if we're running into issues with the igniter element, let's first make sure that the unit is completely cleaned out. We don't have a clogged burn pot. We don't have ash blockage. And then from there, we can always do an ohm test on the igniter to see if it's in proper range. And ultimately, if that igniter goes out, this is the process for pulling it out. Let's go ahead and get the igniter back in there so we can just show how you reinstall that. First up, we're just gonna get the igniter back in the housing. And again, we're gonna thread it all the way down until we can't see any threads anymore into that housing. So it's important that it's all the way in. Great. Once he's got it in there kind of hand tight, yeah, grab that crescent wrench. We don't need to over crank it, but we want to make sure that it's snug. Yeah, great. Yeah, feels nice and tight in there. We don't have any gaps. Looks pretty good. Just gonna double check that with the pliers real quick, but yeah, seems nice and tight. Again, we don't need to over crank it, but that's in there nice and secure. So next up right here, we're gonna fish these wires back through that housing plate. And if your wires come loose and we have excess wires, it's always good to have a couple extra zip ties in place. As you can see, that's zip tied right there. We don't want to have excess wires being loose and kind of hanging out. So now that Nate's got that on there, again, we just have those 3 bolts. We're gonna pop each one of them in. Again, keep them loose until you have all 3 in place. One down, 2 to go. And the cover here, yeah, we definitely don't need to crank. It's just a nice snug up on there. Great, and then he's just gonna get those all secure. Excellent. So now that everything is secure with the housing, igniters in place, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put that blue tube back on, which again allows some supplemental air from our intake to come past the igniter for better ignition. And lastly, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna connect our electrical. So again, these are 2 black wire leads that go to 2 black wire leads. With the igniter element, it does not matter which wire connects to which. We just wanna make sure that we have a really good connection. We give them a nice little tug once we have them together, but we just wanna make sure that we have a really nice connection there. Again, if any wires feel like they're dangling or loose, grab a couple zip ties and let's make sure that everything is nice and tight. But that is going to be the replacement of the igniter in the Freedom PS21 pellet stove. If you have questions as you go through it or need assistance, please leave us a comment down below. We're always here. We're always happy to help. Thanks for joining us.